Hi, this is Ed Driscoll. Welcome to Silicon Graffiti. Last time around, we looked at the future of television in the age of the internet. But on Friday, July 17, 2009, the man who perhaps best defined television news in an era when TV meant 3 channels being transmitted over the air passed away at age 92. So we wanted to speak with Noel Shepard of newsbusters.org about the legacy, pro and con, of CBS's Walter Cronkite. And later, we'll bring in Austin Bay of austinbay.net to discuss Cronkite and the Tet Offensive. Noel, first of all, thanks for stopping by Silicon Graffiti this week.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Ed.
Noel, the broadcast media went into mourning the weekend of Cronkite's death. Glenn Reynolds of Instapundit.com wrote that they were saddened not so much by Cronkite's passing, but by the power he represented. How powerful was Cronkite, or TV news in general, at the peak of his career?
It was amazing, and frankly, I don't think that his power in the media, either 40 years ago or even today, can be understated. I think that he radically changed journalism, he radically changed television journalism, and so much of the model that, if you think about it, it's much more modern. There's a lot more features. There's a lot more editing. It's a lot slicker. But it was interesting. I had seen the first broadcast that he did, which was September of 1963. It was shortly before Kennedy was assassinated. And it really, as much as we think things have changed, it really follows a very, very similar model that he created back then, and he deserves a tremendous amount of our esteem and respect. And certainly we don't agree with him politically, but an icon of the journalism industry died last week, and we should all be saddened by it.
Cronkite's career essentially had 3 phases. There was the in-the-field World War II reporter, the pioneering television anchorman, and then his post-retirement career, when he wrote columns and op-eds and returned to TV from time to opine on the great issues of the day. When journalists retire, they tend to speak much more openly about their profession and their own worldview than they ever did during their workaday years. Noel, what do you make of this phase of Cronkite's career?
Well, what's interesting is that he became an unabashed liberal at that point. He really was tremendously unconcerned with any image whatsoever, or trying to present an image that he was at all down the middle. He actually gave an interview sometime in the 90s, if I recall, where he said that journalists should be liberal, that journalists should be tremendously skeptical of government, that journalists should be always taking a far left view. And I think it was, to a certain extent, I think from my perspective, and I think potentially from the conservative point of view, his legacy may have been a little bit diminished by his unabashed liberalism in his retirement. Maybe if he had been more of a statesman and less outspoken about his liberal views, maybe we on the right would have a more favorable opinion of him.
Noel, in a post you wrote for Newsbusters back in October of 2005, you quoted Cronkite as telling Larry King, quote, "We're an ignorant nation right now. We're not really capable, I do not think, the majority of our people, of making the decisions that have to be made at election time, and particularly in the selection of their legislatures and their Congress and the presidency, of course." But what does this say about the industry to which Cronkite devoted his entire adult life?
It's really a damning statement on his industry, and I don't think that he picked up on that. And isn't it astoundingly ironic and maybe delicious that here we are 4 years later, and I would say conservatives all around the country could make the same case given who was just elected in 2008 and also who was put into positions of power in the Senate and in the House in 2006. So, what's interesting, Ed, is I think that in a lot of ways he's right, but I don't think he's right for reasons that he would agree with if he was alive today. I think one of the reasons why people are so in America when it comes to politics, when it comes to, in particular, let's say civics, with how bills are created, with how bills are passed, when it comes to fiscal matters, when it comes to budgets, when it comes to so many things, I think that the American people are very, very much in the dark because of people like Walter Cronkite, because of his replacement folks like Katie Couric, Brian Williams, and Charlie Gibson. Today's broadcasts have changed in that I think that they have been tremendously dumbed down. I think that they are talking at maybe a third or fourth grade level, and they don't go into details about things either economic or civics oriented and whatnot. And I think as a result, we really do have a tremendously uninformed electorate. And you know what? His industry is largely responsible.
Noel, we'll come back to you in just a few moments. But in the meantime, we wanted to bring in Colonel Austin Bay, co-author, along with Jim Dunnigan, of A Quick and Dirty Guide to War, to get his take on Cronkite and the Vietnam War. Austin, what caused Cronkite to turn on that war during the Tet Offensive?
Large numbers of U.S. commentators see the video footage, see the response and on the part of the South Vietnamese Army, which is surprised, and U.S. forces, and they're highly critical. Now, what emerges after Tet is that the risk that the North Vietnamese took, understood they were taking, hey, they got hit very, very hard by Allied firepower. The North Vietnamese divisions were absolutely smashed in several places. And the Viet Cong that came so-called out of the woodwork, the Viet Cong suffered extraordinary casualties, but certainly the Viet Cong was a vastly diminished force after 1968, and they exposed themselves. The NVA took heavy casualties. Therefore, you get the U.S. counterclaim, at least by U.S. military, that we actually won Tet. And the North Vietnamese point of view on that is that the military battle was really secondary. The media or strategic information political war in 1968, which was a huge political, huge election. That was the one that counted. And heck, you have Lyndon Johnson saying that he's not going to run for president. He withdraws from the race for the presidency, and the North Vietnamese chalked that up as a political victory. Is Cronkite the sole source of the "we lost at Tet" message? No, he's not. But you look at the way the three major networks and his positioning vis-a-vis the other anchors at the time, and he's certainly a major voice. And he was certainly shocked by the Tet offensive, and he read it that way, and that's in history. Well, history is the judge, Ed.
Noel, was this a moment that Cronkite himself would return to later in his career?
Yeah, he did, because I believe it was in either 2006 or 2007 when he declared that Iraq and Vietnam are the same. And they're not the same, Ed. You and I know that, and our military advisors know that. And I think that one of the problems that we experienced during the Iraq War is everybody was quick to declare things as a Cronkite moment. And if you remember, we had John Murtha coming out and making statements that the American military is losing in Iraq, and that was a Cronkite moment. So anytime anyone was willing to say on air that America is losing the war in Iraq, that immediately became a Cronkite moment. And again, here we are, it's July 2009, and things are much better in Iraq than folks back in 2006 and 2005 who were declaring us lost ever predicted.
Any final thoughts on Cronkite's legacy as a television journalist?
I think his legacy is going to be long-lasting. I think that what was interesting, Ed, if you've seen, and I'm sure you have like everybody else, you've seen his response when Kennedy was shot and how he chokes up. You've seen his response of us landing on the moon and the excitement that you could see in his face, the amazement. He's a legend, irrespective of his politics and how much we disagree with him. He was a fine anchorman. I wish he would have been much more centrist in his views, but I think his legacy is going to be a very, very fine one.
Noel Shepard, whose posts can be found at newsbusters.org, and Austin Bay of austinbay.net. Thanks for stopping by Silicon Graffiti.
Thank you for having me, Ed, anytime.
Okay, Ed, you take care.
For Silicon Graffiti, I'm Ed Driscoll.